Review Board to order at 7:01 p.m. First, we'll ask if there are any public comments not related to items on the agenda tonight. Hearing none, we'll move into the public hearing portion of the agenda. There are 3 public hearings on land use applications scheduled tonight. Our role is to conduct the public hearing and to make decisions about the matter before us. In making these decisions, we must apply the applicable codes and laws and cannot vary from or change those laws or codes. Members of the Historic Review Board are to be unbiased. Before the start of the hearing, I will ask the Historic Review Board members whether they have any potential conflicts such as family, financial, or business relationships with any of the applicants or with regard to the land in question. I will also ask whether any of the Historic Review Board members have discussed the application in question with any of the parties or have independent knowledge of relevant facts such as from a visit to the site in question. Any member of the audience may question any Historic Review Board member about their disclosures. A staff report has been prepared for each application and has been made available to the public 7 days before the first public hearing. The staff report identifies the approval criteria that apply to each applicant's proposal. Staff has analyzed the criteria which are contained in the staff report. The quasi-judicial hearing procedure that the Historic Review Board will follow is set out in state law and the Oregon City Municipal Code. The hearing procedure steps are shown on the Historic Review Board website. Public testimony will be called on in the order that it was requested in advance of the meeting. If you have not emailed city staff at planning@orcity.org to request to speak and would like to testify, please raise your virtual or physical hand when I ask if there are any others in the audience who would like to participate. For the public record, please begin all testimony stating your name and city of residence. If you would like to receive a copy of the notice of decision, please state your mailing address or email address. Testimony and evidence should be directed toward the applicable approval criteria. If you believe other criteria apply in addition to those addressed in the staff report, identify and discuss those criteria and explain how and why you believe they apply to the application under consideration. Any person may submit written material while the public record is open on each application. Any written materials received by the city staff during the time period in which the record is open will be placed in the record. Written materials submitted during the public hearing must be presented to the city staff in order to become part of the record. If a person intends for PowerPoint presentations, reports, pictures, or other exhibits used in their oral testimony to be placed in the record, copies must be submitted to the city staff while the record is open. If they're not given to staff, they will not be included. Any person wishing a continuance to present additional evidence or testimony or to keep the record open to respond to new evidence must make that request before the public testimony portion of the hearing is closed. If the Historic Review Board makes a decision with which you disagree, any issue that you may wish to appeal must have been raised on the record for the consideration of the City Commission or the Land Use Board of Appeals or both. Without raising the issue on the record with sufficient detail and accompanied by statements or evidence that the city and all parties can respond to the issue will not be deemed appealable to the City Commission or State Land Use Board of Appeals. In addition, the failure of an applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient detail to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Now we'll open the record for Oregon City file number GLUA 20-00022 and HR 2010 historic review for alterations to a contributing structure in the Kinema National Register District at 112 Miller Street. I'll now ask each Historic Review Board member if they've had any ex parte contacts, conflicts of interest, bias, or any other statements to declare or have visited the site. Paul.
I have gone by the site, obviously, over a lot of times in the years, but no, I've not. That's all I've done.
Okay. Ray?
I have visited the site and I do not have any conflicts.
Sabrina?
I visited, but I don't have any conflicts.
And I've also visited and don't have any conflicts. Are there any additional findings that any of the historic reviewer members found in the site, visiting the site, that you would like to enter into the record?
No other findings or comments.
Okay. And then does anyone in the audience wish to question any of the historic review board members about these disclosures? All right, in that case, we'll turn it over to Kelly for the staff report.
Thank you, Chair Blythe. I'm Kelly Reed. I am the Historic Preservation Planner for Oregon City. I just want to make sure before I want to make sure I didn't misspeak earlier when I said we have people in attendance representing all the public hearings. The two folks on the video with AMNER as your name, are you 112 Miller?
Yes.
Representing, okay.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't see your question until just now.
That's okay. I just wanted to double check because my I didn't see a name I recognized. Thanks. So I'm going to share my screen and share my staff report and recommendation. Let's do from beginning. Okay, can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay. So this is a historic review application for alterations to an existing contributing home within the Kinema National Register District. 112 Miller Street. This is a 5,000 square foot lot. The home plus the detached garage take up almost all of the lot coverage. They are, it's sandwiched in between two other properties on Miller Street, close to Highway 99E. This is an older street view photo, I believe, but it shows kind of the home being in some poor condition as far as some of the windows, siding, roof. And my understanding is that the current owners purchased it and are planning to restore and fix it up. Here are a couple other photos. You can kind of see the condition of the home. And the proposal includes restoration of the home, but also adding a dormer, a shed dormer to the north facing roof. And so there's a drawing that was submitted, and then 2 example photos of like precedent images of similar dormers that the applicant was hoping to replicate. So there are a few measurements that I look at as staff, to assess whether or not this dormer would be appropriate on this home, whether the design of the dormer is appropriate. Much of it is, the dimensions of it, the roof pitch, and the length, distance from the edge of the roof, things like that. So we can go back to this slide as needed to discuss that if the board has any questions. This is a bungalow. I'm going to go back to the house photos. So the inventory form describes this house as a bungalow. The roof pitch appears to be 612. Bungalows, in many bungalows in Kinema and in Oregon City tend to have a side gable roof. And so then on the front gable, you typically see a shed dormer on the front gable facing the front. And that's what this example images on this page show. Those are 2 homes with a front facing shed dormer. And so this is a little bit different for a bungalow, as it would put that shed dormer on the side. The owner did mention in the application that upon tearing off some of the roof shingles and doing some repair work, it looked like there were some, there was evidence that something was there previously. So we don't have any historic photos of the house to show what it used to look like. So I think the conjecture was perhaps there was a dormer there at one point, but we don't know. So back to the design of the dormer. So it'd be 12 feet wide on the 40-foot long roof. And it would start down about 3 feet from the center ridge or peak of the existing roof on the house. So I'm going to go back to one of these photos so it's maybe easier to see. So can you all see where my mouse is pointing?
Yes.
Okay, so 3 feet from the roof peak here that's where the dormer would start. 14 feet in from this edge, measure 14 feet in, it would start there. And then I didn't see this, I actually asked the applicant over email and included the email correspondence in the agenda packet. It looks like the distance here was 2 feet from the bottom eave, but I can't be totally sure about that. And the proposed dormer would have a 412 pitch with a bank of 4 windows, and the windows would be about a 2-to-1 proportion, kind of similar to this photo here on the top, but they would be about 2 feet wide by 4 feet tall. So I'm not sure what the dimensions of these windows are, but that's pretty large for a window, I guess for a window in a dormer. Not overly large, but I think larger than a lot of shed dormers. So I added, these are not from the applicant, but I provided some photos that I was able to find of similar side dormers. These examples are a little bit, I think the one on the left here, the house has a similar roof pitch. It's probably a 612. I'm not sure what this pitch is. These windows are, I think, square windows. And so this dormer is a lot shorter. It doesn't stick up as much. This window has this dormer has the rectangular windows. So that is kind of a decent example, but I think this roof pitch is probably an 8. And a couple of slightly larger shed dormers that are in Oregon City. These are both in the McLaughlin area, but just to show you kind of what it would look like. And of course, this one is on a front facing roof as well, but it is larger, having larger windows in it, just so you can get a sense of what that would look like. And, these both have that bank of 4 windows. So I think, I think it would be great to get direction from the board on whether the dormer as proposed has kind of appropriate dimensions for a 612 roof pitch. I think that it being centered on the roof and set back, 14 feet in, being only 12 feet wide, I think helps a lot to not make it stick out and be too large and invisible. And not fit in with the house. This is another drawing that's of a house in McLaughlin that I thought was interesting, showing different pitches. So this is a 912 roof with a 312 shed dormer. And you can see this dormer, not only does it start really close to the roof peak, but it comes out all the way to line up with the side of the house, which I don't believe this proposal would do that. I think that this would be set back a little bit more. The board may want to add a condition of approval to ensure that this vertical face of the shed dormer isn't like flush with the side of the house. I would say it would probably, like this dormer would probably be more appropriate if it were a little bit farther back up on the roof, if that makes sense.
Oh, was that drawing as an addition or an infill house, or that was a?
No, so this is actually a historic home. This one, the addition is actually this wing over here, so it's kind of irrelevant, but this is an existing one. I don't know if this drawing is correct though, because these dormers are actually not really, like, this is just drawing an existing condition. I don't even know if this drawing is representative of the house in real life, because when I look at it in person, it doesn't quite look like that. But I think that there are a lot of designs like this on new construction. And so I wanted to kind of just point that out. The applicant also is proposing to replace all of the windows in the house. Now, there are a few of them that are aluminum, but most of the windows are the original wood windows, and they're pictured here. And the applicant gave various kind of reasons or descriptions of what about the window is problematic or broken. And so, we can go through that list. But I want to point out specifically window number 1 here on the front to the left of the front door, and window number 5. And then of course, window number 2 here as well. So that's the aluminum window. This whole little bump out here on the front porch is proposed to be removed as part of this project. And that's an addition that is not compatible. And so I think that's kind of an obvious yes for the board, at least. And then there would be a window, on the original front of the house. Then the proposal is to add a 1/1 wood window. But on the other side of the house, of the front door, is a picture window with a kind of a 4/1 design. And then on the side of the house, number 5, is a group of 3 windows with various kind of designs with grids above, kind of a unique design that has a lot of character. I think these 2 windows are character defining windows. And so my staff report and recommendation talks about, potentially preserving these if possible. But I do want to add, which was not in your packet, but the applicant sent me after the agenda went out, a quote or a bid from a window supplier for Anderson brand wood clad windows that would replicate these designs and be used as replacement windows for these. So I will pull that up and share it with you. I will also email it to the board members right now if you want to look at it yourselves.
Okay.
I'm going to actually stop sharing and pull that up on the screen. Okay. So I believe this is, and I'll let the applicant talk more about this because they're here and they can tell us more about it, but it looks like it does its best to kind of replicate the design. But I don't think there's a whole lot of detail on here to describe exactly how it would replicate. And so I have a condition of approval recommended to ensure that if these windows are replaced, that they that the replacement windows do in fact match the original design. And so I'm going to go back to that. I'll email it to you so that you can scroll through it. And then while the applicant, sorry, this is awkward because we're over Zoom, but during the applicant's presentation, if you want me to show anything on screen in particular, I'm happy to do so. So you can just let me know if you want me to show any part of that information about the window replacement. So we go back to the PowerPoint. Okay. So my recommended conditions of approval are one, that any new wood windows shall use cladding of either fiberglass or aluminum to better resemble painted wood. And the sash color be darker than the house siding color. So a caveat with this one, the wood windows, the Anderson 100 series that was in the application form, when you look that up, it appears that those are vinyl clad. They're vinyl clad wood. So this would be a change to that. I do believe Anderson makes a product that is fiberglass aluminum clad. What I don't know is if that product, any of those products, allow for the sash color to be a different color than the other parts of the window and the frame. So that part of the condition, these things can be painted after you buy them and install them, but I think that might be worth discussing, the whole color issue and whether whatever products they're using could accomplish that, or whether the board wants to approve the windows at all, to be replaced, all or some. And recommended condition number 2, for the dormer, I have the applicant shall ensure the trim, eaves, and brackets on the dormer match that of the rest of the house. Number 3, I think if you read through the full staff report, I'm asking for HRB direction on this one, because it's a little strange. So normally, one of our design guidelines is that the new work be differentiated from the original house. And so what we do in many cases, like in the case of an addition, for example, one strategy is to use a different width or siding reveal. So if the siding is a 4-inch reveal on your addition, you do 5 or 6-inch reveal. And that's a way to differentiate new from old. Now, this being a dormer that's kind of on the roof, having a different siding reveal might not be as desirable, or, might not have the same effect as doing it kind of next to the old siding to differentiate it. So looking for a little bit of board direction on that, and then, applicant input on that as well. 4th recommended condition of approval is that if the applicant replaces those 2 distinctive windows, window 1 and window 5, that have the character, with, not that the other windows don't, but these are more distinctive. If the applicant replaces those windows, that the replacement windows have the same design dimensions and exterior muntins or grids. These are the images of those 2 windows. What the applicant said about them in the application is that window number 5 is wood and will not open due to house settling and is now crooked in the rough opening, will be replaced. Windows number 1 will be removed and replaced with wood clad window to match. So I'm available for any questions that the board might have.
All right. Do any board members have any questions for staff?
I don't at the moment.
No.
Kelly, you didn't have any, so in the conditions of approval, no further direction on the dimensions of the shed dormer?
I think that mostly that the shed dormer dimensions are appropriate and compatible. I think it's hard to tell exactly how it will look without like a real elevation drawing that, to scale with, or like some sort of rendering. It's a little bit hard to tell. I think the question that I have is the 4 foot height of those windows, what that will look like on this low pitch roof of a 612 roof. So I think that it's hard to tell, and it's probably, it's fairly subjective, but, looking for board direction on that.
Okay. So the original roof is 612 and the dormer is 412 as designed? That's
Right.
All right, thank you.
One thing I'll add to, maybe the applicant can talk about this. The applicant mentioned that they had a write-up from a window repair company on the condition of the windows and what it would take to repair them, or whether it was possible. But I did not get that document. So I think that could be helpful. But so maybe the applicant can discuss it if they have that with them.
I don't have the any paperwork in regards to it. It was mainly a phone conversation. I was just trying to get an idea of what I'd be looking at in regards to the windows themselves. And in talking to the gentleman who does all restoration windows, their main concern was what is there of the original windows before they start to do any type of work. Most of the work that they try and do when they are revitalizing windows is actually restoration, not fabrication. And you can kind of see in some of the pictures, the windows, so much of them is gone. Unfortunately, the house was put at such a state of disrepair that through the years, the only 2 windows that open up, or 3 windows that open up right now, are 2 of them are aluminum ones, and one of them literally was busted the whole bottom half of it off so that it busted loose and it does open. The others, they've all been painted. It looks like they tried screwing them together. And then also we had, it looks like at some point they had the heat go out in the house. So they decided to start securing windows and putting plastic. When we purchased the home, the whole house, every window was covered with thick mill plastic and 1,000 staples, which I've removed to try and get the process started on the windows. But all the weights and everything are so badly deteriorated that it's all gone. Some of them were missing. I don't know what happened to them or why they were removed. But condition is just horrible. The other thing to note too is I did submit the original Anderson windows, and I did it incorrectly. When I went in and ordered them and everything, I presented it that they had to be fiberglass clad, and I don't know why it went to vinyl. But since then, I've submitted for the fiberglass. And in discussing with them, the fiberglass, we did a profile of the windows that are existing to the windows that I'm proposing. Basically, they are identical. They're going to have the exterior mullions and everything. They gave me choices. There's color swaths. It's very limited. There's only like roughly a dozen colors that they can be chosen. And however, like Hilly said, they're all paintable. So I didn't know that that would be a concern, since whatever color she had mentioned, they have to be darker than the rest of the trim or the house itself, which is fine. I mean, we could definitely do that. There's no problem. The intent of all this really is just to try and get it to be livable again, and also bring it somewhat back to where it was original. That's why the proposal, like on the dormer, if you look at it, it is a little bit vague. However, one of the pictures that's shown that we submitted that has the 4 window, that house is actually right on the adjacent street. And that's basically what I kind of drew that up to replicate, was just a house that's already there. And it seemed to be a very similar roof line and such. So that's the one that I kind of replicated in the drawing. And then, of course, the bump out, like Kelly had said, that's definitely was never there. You can actually see the concrete porch on the inside in the front of the room where they extended the room out. So a lot of this is just trying to bring it back to somewhat close to what it used to be and then clean it up.
Okay, thanks for that. I guess we got a little bit out of sequence there. So assuming we don't have any other questions for staff, we'll move into the public testimony. So you as the applicant, you will have up to 15 minutes. So I think we got some of that already. But I guess if there's any other, if you want to walk through anything else in the application or add on to how Kelly presented it.
Not really. I think I've covered pretty much all that can be covered. I mean, like I said, it's basically just trying to bring it back to where it was. And if you had any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Okay. Any questions from any of the board members?
I have a question. I think Paul's trying to talk to you, but he's muted.
Excuse me. Is it on a concrete foundation? When you were talking about there seems to be sagging or something, and that's got the windows out of alignment. I'm trying to understand.
It is on a concrete foundation, but I can kind of see from where the window framing is. On one side, you can see it's shifted. In other words, if I put a level across the very top and kind of line it up with the framing of the window, I can see where it's slightly shifted. And I think that has to do with why the windows haven't come loose. There's so much paint and whatnot on them. I know that in order to try and bust them loose, we're not talking about the old trick of just putting a utility blade or such in and trying to cut the crack open. And then in addition to that, one of them that I tried to get open, when I put the blade in, it kept getting stuck, and right off the bat, I could see that they had screwed it shut. So trying to find the screws underneath 20 layers of paint was kind of hard to do.
I would like to, first of all, I would like to go to the dorm. It seems like all of the other shed dorms start at the top of the roof. So you're showing you're coming down the roof 38 inches, and then you start out on the shed dorm. It seems very common that they start right at the top of the roof. And I think that would give a cleaner line to the dorm if you started it up at that level. And it seems very consistent with all of the other pictures that Kelly showed and you showed, that they are all start at the crest of the roof. And was there a reason they wanted to start below that?
Actually, the one picture of the house that's right around the corner, it does show that roof line, or that line of that dormer starting lower on the roof. Okay. However, if you think that looks cleaner, if that's what the board would like, I have absolutely no problem with that. Again, I basically replicated a dormer right around the corner that looked as close to the house and the original, as well as kind of lined up with what the interior looked like in the house. But I have no opposition to changing.
My thinking is if you started at a little higher up and you maintain a 412, that would give you just a little bit more standing room in the room in your inside of your dorm by starting a little higher up, and it might give you a little bit more room to play with in having windows along the face of the dorm. So it might be just a change. It's something that I've looked at before, and I just think it makes a cleaner line. Anyway, that's my opinion on the dorm. I don't know what other people think, but that's the reason why I brought it up.
I had a question about the windows. In the packet, it says windows number 1 and 2 will be removed and replaced with a wood clad window to match window number 3. So is it now that original window number 1 will be replaced with a window that is like itself, as opposed to matching window number 3?
So
I think I said that wrong. I think I meant to say it just the opposite of the way it was
Oh, okay.
described, because like Kelly had mentioned, that number 1 is original.
Right, and it's beautiful, yeah.
Yeah. So did I say windows 1 and 2 will be removed and replaced with it? Yeah, I'm sorry. I did say that wrong. I meant to say that 2 and 3 were going to be replaced and well, 3 will be gone, but 2 will match number 1.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Thanks.
One question I had, it was kind of hard to tell from the drawing on the shed dormer. Is the face of the shed dormer flush with the wall below in that drawing? Or is it setback?
That question was asked by Kelly also. So the original intent that I had was actually to line it up similar to that one drawing that she showed where it is flush with the floor down below, and then still maintain the overhang for the roof pitch. But again, that kind of replicates the one around the corner, and I'm totally open up to interpretation, because I've seen it both ways also. I've seen it where that distance from the bottom of the eave up to the window, the beginning of the dormer at the windows themselves, it's either just the pitch of the roof, the overhang of the roof, or it extends farther up. So I guess what I'm saying is my original intent was just to match the exterior wall up above with the door.
If you maintain the same eave that you have on the that's from the bearing wall on the main roof on the dorm, but so the eave equals then the bearing wall, kind of, if you were to go up it, so that would set the dorm back whatever the distance is of the eave into the room, and that would be kind of consistent.
Roughly 20 inches is what
20
it is.
inches, yeah.
Yeah, there's an overhang of 20 inches on the side.
And so you set the dorm back 20 inches so that the eave equals comes out equal with the distance to the board to the bearing wall below. But I still believe that if it came off the ridge of the roof, that it would look better. It's just.
I agree. I like that look better, actually. I just thought the society would like to see it closer to what's actually present there, but I agree with you 100%. It would look better to come from the eave. The ridge.
Any other questions for the applicant?
One other thing is the window on your front porch. Is that window number 1 that's off to the left of your front door?
Yes.
Okay. I know I saw one of those windows in a shop that's available, just identical to that, where taken out of a house that's been demolished. So that exact window is available in some of these stores from where they do reclaiming. So if you wanted to get that exact window, so that without having to have somebody build it, you could go, they probably pay $100 for it and buy one.
Do you remember where by chance?
Probably a Can-Be Restore or one of the tickets to Habitat for Humanity Restore.
So we've looked in those, and they're kind of hit and miss type scenarios. And then also it's the dimensions that are tricky. But believe me, I would love to do that because I don't know if Kelly can share the bid for the windows that I'm replacing. And they follow in suit with everything else that's going on right now in the world. And it's quite the sticker shock, believe me. I would much rather be going the direction of replacing with windows as you're suggesting. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to, because that front window is going to be basically $1,000 to get the replacement on it. You multiply that out times how many windows there are. This is not a cheap endeavor that I'm going into here just to try and replace windows.
Well, if we wait longer, then it's more expensive too.
Yeah, and the other problem I'm running into also is that right now it's the price, lumber, everything. It just escalates so quickly. So they gave me the price of 1,000 and said that they're expecting in another month it's going to have another increase. So kind of under that gun of, as opposed to just kind of waiting and trying to look around.
If I could go back to the windows, Kelly, can we ensure that the windows have a sill plate and an apron below? And so that they match up in exterior design or view of the windows, so that there's inset enough to maintain a similar and compatible appearance to the existing windows that they will be replacing.
Yeah, I guess my question back to the applicant would be, will the casing, the trim and the sill plate and the apron be replaced as part of the window replacement, or would you be keeping the trim and inserting the new window inside of that?
I wouldn't be keeping the trim because that's all part of it being so deteriorated, but I hadn't thought about that sill plate. I just assumed it'd be replication of the windows, and I don't believe that it would include having that bottom because that is distinctive to those
Yeah,
houses.
that's a critical element in maintaining a compatible appearance. And so if you take a look at the existing ones, you'll see that they all have that sill plate, and you'll see an apron underneath the sill plate and how they are set in. And so if that could be fabricated or separate, just so that it provides that look and feel and the shadow lines, then that is a step forward and making it a replacement of a wood window.
Okay.
I think that something to know about this, and this is, I think I'm constantly learning more about windows and window replacements, is that, the historic wood windows have a single pane of glass, right? Which is why we all use storm windows many times to provide better insulation and keep our houses from being too drafty. But when you put a new window in there, new windows tend to have, or contemporary windows are typically double paned. And so because of that extra piece of glass and the space in between the glass, that automatically decreases the depth and the shadow lines, Paul, that you're mentioning of the windows, right? Because you have a thicker, glass and interior. So I think it's not truly possible to maintain the exact same.
Well, I did those on my windows. I've got when I replaced or added different windows to my 1880 house in Kinema. I was able to achieve that with, but I paid money. So I'm very sensitive to what it costs to do a correct replica, and so therefore I'm cognizant that if there are something that gets close, but yet I did achieve it exactly as, without, I just had to pay for it. So it can be done. But all I can say is that the sill plate and the apron below would be and the trim around, the exterior trim around would be critical in maintaining the a look and feel. And if the window is set back into the framing, that would aid in creating a little setback, and that would complement making it more credible as a compatible window.
Any other questions for the applicant before we move on to any other public comments? All right, hearing none, we'll have 5 minutes for any public comments from neighborhood associations or other organizations, or 3 for individuals. Do we have any other public comments on this application? All right, hearing none, then we will close the public record. Before we do that though, I just pasted a link, Kelly, if we could maybe put that in the record. That has some guidelines that I was looking at for dormer dimensions.
Would you like me to open it up and share a screen so that all board members can?
Yeah, that'd be helpful. Hopefully it will open for you.
Is that working?
It is, yes. So if you scroll kind of towards the middle, it gives some guidelines for dormers, and I think they're pretty good. And I think that everything about this application complies, with these types of dimensions, and that the pitch is no less, is being 412 is no less than half of the main, all the other setbacks. The one thing that I see, here is this suggests kind of the fully supported concept of it, the face being 1 foot back from the wall below, which given, that we don't have, I think it's pretty feasible that there was potentially a dormer there in the past, but without knowing the dimensions of it, I think that we would want to choose something that's the least disruptive to the existing architectural lines. And so my suggestion would be that we put a setback on all the sides from that to make it as, least impactful to the original structure. So I guess before we move into close the record and move into deliberations, I guess for the applicant, the question, if you have any comments on those guidelines there, if you would be opposed to adding that that condition to set back the face of the dormer.
No,
I accept those.
okay. Paul, you do notice the one he's proposing, is that also going to maintain that the ridge of the dormer is not matching the ridge of the house?
I still like it coming off the ridge of the house, but I think it's a cleaner line, but I'll go along with whatever the majority says.
All right, in that case, I guess we'll close the record and move.
Hey, Grant, real quick. Do we need to acknowledge the letter from the M&A? From Jesse?
I think that was
That's
other application.
another application.
Was it? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. That was for 112.
Okay, so in that case, we'll close the record and move into board deliberations. Comments from the board members?
Well, I really want to hope that we could get windows, have this bottom sill plate and apron around these windows so that that they're set back in there to give us a type of look and feel that we can that comes in close as we can get to historic windows. The windows are oftentimes considered to be the eyes of a historic building, and people make assessments and judgments based upon the design and appearance of windows. And therefore, in historic buildings, they're considered to be one of the more critical elements. And doing them right, if we can, is important.
Tend to agree with that. I think the standard that you set with your Windows policy maybe a little too is the ideal, but maybe a little too grand of a vision to impose on everyone. But I think trying to replicate the existing trim profile, including the apron and sill, is ideal. So I think we could add something along those lines.
Historically, when we're replacing a wood window, we need to step up one step above, because in a remodel, and that's kind of the goals and the guidelines, is that for us to do things like that. So in the case, if they were repairing them, we would step back, but when we're replacing a historically wood window, then we have a little more obligation to try to be compatible than otherwise.
Well, Paul, they'd be more. They're both compatible if they're replacing. It's just am I hearing you right that the debate is just to the degree of compatibility? Like if there was a level 1 through level 5, yours is level 5, and we're still compatible if it's a level 3. If you know what I'm talking about, if you're getting what I'm saying.
Yeah, I do, but this is having a sill plate and an apron, or because they've already have a sill plate and an apron on the existing wood windows, is not trying to ask for anything. That's kind of like, that's saying, okay, we're replacing a wood window. We're going to do it with a sill plate and an apron, just like what they have right now. And that should not be, that's not extending. It's not going to from 1 to 3 or 5. It's just basic logic to me. And if I didn't have that, it would really wouldn't be in compliance with our code.
Yeah, I think that's, I think we can add the condition that that those are replicated. The depth, the exact same depths may not be the same, but.
I'd go with that.
I also think that a condition that says that the sill plate and the apron should be maintained as best as they can would be appropriate.
How about the size of the upstairs, the dorm windows? Anybody got any opinions on that? What was the dimensions, Kelly, of the windows that are being proposed?
2 feet wide by 4 feet tall, and there are 4 of them.
In my mind, the size of the windows aren't very important in the sense that they'll be dictated by the dimensions of the dormer and the pitch of the dormer. So, the windows will just fill whatever is there. So as long as the roof pitch is no less than half, the pitch of the main roof, which it appears to comply with, and it's set back in reasonable dimensions from all of the other 4 sides, then I think it generally the size of the windows will be appropriate in my mind.
Yeah. Yep.
Is there if they were smaller, what is legal egress requirements? Are those windows going to be considered for legal egress?
Is that a question for me?
Yes.
I don't know, and I don't think that a 2x2 opening would meet egress requirements. So
I can fill you in on that if you like.
Thank you.
So egress, you got to have 5.7 openable square feet for the window. And typically, if you're talking about a casement, one function window, it usually winds up about 2 8x4. As long as it's close enough to the floor. So 2x4 is probably not going to be something you can qualify for egress out of.
Thanks for that. I think we could probably leave the final size and configuration of the windows for staff approval. If the applicant came back and needed to adjust those a little bit to comply with any of those other requirements, if they were going to make this a bedroom or whichever.
Is there a window on the back end of the house upstairs?
There was one, but I didn't throw that one onto this. It is actually, I don't know if it was a window. However, it's solid boarded up. If you look at the back side of the house, very back on one of the pictures, it shows that there's kind of like a wood frame with an aluminum window recessed in it that goes to a bathroom back there. And the one up above, it looks to me like they just took out the window entirely and built some form of a frame for an air conditioner, I'm guessing, because it was too hard to even tell what was there.
Right. It might be a place though where you could put a larger window back there that would make the upstairs compliant for as an escape route.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay, well, I think all those considerations are, they're not in the application as it is before us. So I think we can, for, what we have, I think we have everything we need to make a motion.
Yes, I would recommend a move for approval.
So with the,
and allow Kelly to make decisions over the counter on windows or that are on appropriateness where they could come in and be reviewed.
okay, so the added conditions would be that the original sill, windows, exterior sill and apron should be replicated if they can't be restored. And
Yes.
are we in concurrence that the face of the dormer should be set back at least 12 inches from the wall below? Is that?
I agree with that.
Agree.
Same.
And then that I don't know, and then that staff can make, if changes to the windows, further changes are required, that they can make the determination whether any adjustments need further review or if they're acceptable. Is that?
Yes.
Did the board want to speak to the siding reveal size on the home versus on the dormer? Right now, there's a condition
Oh, the differential.
that requires it to be different.
I think I like the condition as it's written.
I'm fine with condition 3.
I'm sorry, could you tell me what condition 3 says again? I don't have it in front of me.
Sure. It says
The dormer.
the dormer shall be differentiated by the use of siding with a different reveal dimensions, such as 5 or 6 inches rather than the 4-inch reveal on the rest of the house.
Yes.
Yes.
So I've got 2 additional conditions that you're adding. One is that all windows shall maintain the existing trim or casing width, the stool and apron, I guess stool or sill plate. I think we're using those terms interchangeably. An apron design, either through restoration or replacement in kind. And the second added condition is that the face of the dormer shall be set back from the existing side of the house by at least 1 foot. And that the dormer window sizes may vary as needed from what's proposed.
Yes.
So do we need a second on that one, Grant, or
Love to have one.
I'll second that.
Okay, I'll call the vote. Board Member Ferry,
Aye.
Board Member Edgar,
Yeah, aye.
Board Member Stobie,
Aye.
Chair Blythe.
Aye. Congratulations and good luck on your project. I think we all hope to see it succeed, and it would definitely improve the neighborhood to see that home be in a little bit better condition than it is today.
And I would like to say God bless you, because I, having rebuilt an 1880 house, just remember, I know you're going to open your pocketbook in a manner that you never ever dreamed.
Wow, thanks.
That should have been said at
Way
the
to
beginning of
put
that.
terror in somebody.
Just a reality check. When you're going to live in it, it makes a difference. If you were going to flip it, that's another thing. But if you're going to live in it, you will make some quality changes and improvements that sometimes you don't really think about, but you'll say, hey, that it's worth it.
Mhm.
And that's no man's land.
All right.
Yeah.
We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, and we'll open the record for Oregon City file number GLUA 21-00021 and HR 2109, historic review for new construction in the McLaughlin Conservation District at 121 Center Street. I'll ask each historic review board member if they've had any ex parte contacts, conflicts of interest, bias, any other statement to declare, and have visited the site and have any items to note about site visits. Board Member Edgar,
No,
and you visited the site?
no, I have not.
Uh,
Read this stuff.
Board Member Ferry?
I visited the site. I just drove by last night and took a look. And the only thing that I noticed that was slightly different than the application was that they had started to remove some of the siding and that the original siding is underneath.
Board Member Stobie?
Visited the site, no ex parte contacts. Noticed the same thing about the siding, but does not vary any opinions or comments or whatnot. So,
All right, and I've also visited the site, but don't have anything to add to what's already been noted. Does anyone in the audience wish to question any of the board members about these disclosures? All right, then we'll turn it over to staff for the report.
Thanks, Chair Blythe. So we have a project here that is, it's an addition to a non-contributing structure in the McLaughlin Conservation District at 121 Center Street. So as you all know, McLaughlin is made up of about 35% of the structures in the district are contributing and are designated, and 65% or so are not designated. So this one is not designated, although it was built in the 20s. And so it's in kind of the period of significance for McLaughlin. The reason it's not designated is because of the alterations that had been made at some point before the district was created. So in the 80s, when the district was created, this home had been altered. And therefore it was, like many homes, not specifically designated. And so we actually don't regulate what this home looks like through the Historic Review Board or through the Historic Overlay, unless an addition of over 30% is being made to the house. So in this case, the project is to add 289 square feet, which amounts to 34% of the square footage of the original size of the home. So they're just over that 30% threshold, which then puts them in the category of new construction, and it comes to the board. So here's the, I think probably the real estate listing photo of the house. I believe it's described as a bungalow in the inventory form, with the alterations including a small addition on the back and some siding replacement. And I think that the form mentions that the windows are wood, but I don't think that they are in wood any longer. So I'm not sure when they were changed. But when you go back in time on Street View back to like 07, they look the same as they are today. So I'm not sure when that happened. The house sits on a slightly larger than typical lot. And so it has a good, it's well spaced from the house next door, well separated, giving lots of space for kind of this addition to be made without kind of getting too close to any other historic resources. So the proposed addition is on the side of the house here, kind of continues the front facade at the same level of the house, but doesn't run the full length or depth of the existing house. Let's see. So the design guidelines, well, I guess before I go there, so this is technically in the category of new construction, right? But it's an addition to an existing home. So we have design guidelines for new construction And then we have design guidelines for alterations and additions to historic structures. And it's a little, applying the design guidelines for new construction to a project like this is always a little bit awkward. So the board, you know, may want to take that into consideration when kind of making a decision on this. And, you know, one of the guidelines, as we discussed for the last hearing for additions and alterations, is to differentiate new from old. The design guidelines for new construction don't talk about that at all, because it's kind of written for a fully new construction, you know, brand new house, not tied to anything existing. And so I have a suggestion in here, and I think that the comments that we received from the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association kind of speak to that as well. So because applying the new design guidelines for new construction is a little bit confusing and awkward, I do want to point out some language in those design guidelines that give the HRB a lot of flexibility on how you apply the guidelines. And what they say, this is on page 3 of the document, is that the guidelines describe a safe harbor to allow new construction projects to be approved easily and quickly. Yet there may be occasions when alternative designs are either desired or needed. For these situations, when an exception to the guidelines is necessary, HRB and staff shall evaluate the proposal based on the significance of the impact, measuring how well the alternative fits into the intent of the guidelines and essentially the end effect on the historic district. So the addition here kind of replicates the house, siding and windows and design almost exactly. The overall height is a little bit shorter than the main house, so I think that does provide some differentiation. And there's a rear door and a small stair on the back. So the existing siding on the home is shown here. You know, it's not, as you mentioned, it's not the original siding. And so the proposal for the new addition is to try to replicate this. But I think the applicant pointed out it's not going to look exactly like it, but it will be close. And so this is a fiber cement product, shingles that have kind of a vertical texture to them, similar to the shingles that are on the house today. The neighborhood association comments, it just, since these were submitted today, I put them in here just to make sure that everyone has a chance to see them, since they were emailed to you this afternoon. Might not have been able to check that. So the 2002 resurvey lists the house as historic but not contributing, as we discussed. And the McLaughlin Association suggested a few things. Massing of the addition must be in a scale that's smaller than the main house. Proposed window should be 1/1 double hung in either fiberglass or wood, with traditional window trim sill and apron. Rear opening should be French door. Siding should be traditional lap or, as a last resort, fiber cement. And it's not recommended that shutters be placed on the addition in order to differentiate the existing structure from the addition. So I think that's the shutters are kind of a perfect example of the awkwardness of the design guidelines for new construction, and the design guidelines for alterations. The design guidelines for new construction, when they talk about, I'll just go back to the house. When they talk about shutters, it just says no shutters are allowed. Shutters are not permitted. In this case, they're replicating what's there. So I think the board can give some direction on whether the shutters are appropriate to include on the new. kind of same with windows. The proposal is to use similar windows. I think the application language was either vinyl or fiberglass. Although the owner did say that they wanted to, so since this window would be removed, that they would like to reuse it on the front, I believe, of the new addition. And then the windows on the side would be brand new windows. These two on the side would be new windows, and they're proposing either vinyl or fiberglass, but ones that resemble the existing windows on the house. So I think HRB direction is needed not only on the shutters, but also on the windows, whether they should match or should be different from what's on the house. So what the guideline says is that non-wood windows are acceptable if appropriate in style and matching wood in profile, shadow line, and if in suitable color and finish. Actual sample is required to be approved. So in this case, the sample is the windows currently on the house that you looked at when you made your site visit. My recommended conditions of approval, other than, you know, wanting your direction on the windows and the shutters, are to add a vertical element where the new addition begins. That could be a gutter, potentially. There might be other things could use, but a gutter would probably be the simplest. Separate the new from the old. Two, that any sliding doors are not permitted. The rear doors should be French doors, made of wood or fiberglass. And that no visible pressure treated wood permitted. The rear stairs shall be painted or stained wood or concrete. I don't think we got any details on the stairs, which is why that condition's in there. And I'll go back to the image here. You can see on the front where some sort of vertical element in the condition would be kind of right at this line right here that divides the new from the old. So I will stop there and open it up for questions.
All right, any questions for staff before we talk to the applicant?
No questions.
No question.
All right, then we'll move into public testimony. So the applicant will have up to 15 minutes, though you don't need to use it all, and then 5 minutes for neighborhood association and 3 minutes for any other individuals. The applicant is here. You can go ahead and state your name, city of residence, and you have your up to 15 minutes.
Okay, I'm Alan Brzezinski. I'm the designer of the project. The owner, who I think is also on here, is Matt and Lauren Jenkins. We're basically kind of fitting this addition in between an existing kitchen window and the existing front plane of the house, and it's going to be a bedroom addition. And the idea is to make it as seamless as possible to the look of the existing home. So we were looking to incorporate the look so somebody wouldn't drive by the house and say, oh my God, it's an addition. That was kind of what drove us in trying to match all of those details across the front. So I did want to bring up, and I'm jumping ahead here, but the doors that are called out in the plan are French doors. They're not a sliding door. So that's been kind of already taken care of. And then really, I think the question of massing that the neighborhood association brought up is kind of taken care of with the shorter roof line, but I guess that's open for opinion. And then there was a question about the stair that will need to be pressure treated if we're touching the ground. So it might wind up being pressure treated part of it for that reason. Not that it couldn't be painted, but I just wanted to bring that up, that will be a requirement if it's. And I don't know if Matt or Lauren, do you have anything you want to speak to in regard to windows, siding? I know you already moved the mini split system
Yeah,
to the north side, so.
yeah. So that space is pretty much cleared out. And as for the stairs, I mean, concrete stairs could be possible.
I wouldn't, it's not my first choice. We have concrete in the front and the back, the front and back doors, and they're not pretty, but it's a possibility.
We're open to the idea.
And then Matt, with the windows, where are we currently at in terms of?
Well, in speaking with Kelly, I kind of wanted to wait until we had a solid idea before I go and order anything. We're open to fiberglass. I would like to reuse this window on the side, on the front, as she had already said. But if, you know, we have to go with fiberglass, that's
These windows are vinyl.
yes, they're currently vinyl. So.
Okay.
Did we lose Grant?
Yeah, we did. I don't see him on the list of participants.
He was coming back. Hi, Grant. The applicants just finished giving their presentation. I don't think we know how much you missed or how much, yeah, if you missed anything.
Yeah, I missed quite a bit, but that's okay. I will catch up as we go.
And I will just clarify that the condition for no pressure treated wood is no visible pressure treated wood. So if it's used on the, you know, posts that are covered up and not visible once it's all done, that's no problem.
Okay.
Okay. Did we get to any questions for the applicant? Yep.
Not yet.
And did we, I guess, I don't know if Lauren Jenkins, if you had anything to add to what Alan shared?
We did a little bit.
Okay. Okay. All right, fine.
Yeah, we were talking and we just talked about the windows. They're currently all vinyl. We would like to use fiberglass or vinyl. What else did we talk about?
The stairs.
Yeah, but we just covered that. So.
Okay, very good. Do any of the board members have any questions for the applicants?
I think in the comments from the McLaughlin Neighborhood Associations, I'm in agreement with all of those comments and the conditions to that they stated here, and I like what it is. I in the front of the house where the new add-on goes, if you could just put like a 4-inch trim board all the way up and down straight where to differentiate, but that would be kind of adequate as far as doing it. And the idea of moving the window that you're pulling out from around to putting it in the front with the same shutters, I don't find a problem with that, because I think that makes it look not like an add-on, I think it's more appropriate than not having it because of the other windows having them. So that part, I wouldn't want that on any other window, but on the front view, I think that's, in my opinion, it's acceptable and a cost savings. Again, I don't like vinyl windows, period. but it's in this case by reusing one that you already have. I think that's more than adequate mitigation.
Okay. I did have a couple of questions, quick questions, I guess. So on the side profile, the window that's on the original side, that window is not moving location, correct?
The shorter one,
I believe, let me scroll to the right.
be just to the west of where the addition connects to the house.
Yes, yeah, the short.
Yeah, that's an existing kitchen window, and that is staying right
Okay. And then I think you heard the, yes, okay, yep, yeah, that shorter one. Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I think you heard that some of the comments that the original siding was underneath. Could you speak to anything you know about the original profile, type of siding, and the condition that it's in?
Matt would have to do that only because I haven't seen that piece.
So it looks kind of similar to what you see in the neighborhood. It's that tongue and groove style. But I'll tell you this, that it looks like the walls were insulated after the construction, because upon removing some of the shingles, I found holes all, through the exterior wall where they had pumped in insulation right into the wall rather than tearing the walls out, because there's not any sheetrock inside the house. It's all plywood on top of tongue and groove. So, and I also don't know how far, if you're looking at the picture west that we'd like to remove where the split unit is. I'm thinking that addition on the back there was added after, and that it probably is not the same siding as what is underneath the window or in the area where we're removing or adding the addition, rather. If that made sense.
It does, yeah, thank you. And then, did you have any comments on the idea of adding a piece of vertical trim or the gutter, keeping the gutter?
Honestly, I think that would be fine. I've been trying to figure out what a good transition would look like, and I haven't yet. So without taking off the outer corner there, the shingles, the siding there, and kind of redoing it, I didn't have a good idea. So.
And honestly, there's already a downspout there.
Yeah.
That maybe will provide what you're looking for. But I think depending on where the siding issue goes with what you wind up using, they may want to put a small piece of trim between the two types of siding anyway, because they won't probably match up exactly. So there would be enough of a difference where it would just be a cleaner joint to have that piece of trim that each one could dead into.
I agree with that.
Yes.
And then, since I know the question or topic might come up, could you speak to the decision to make the addition flush with the front of the house as opposed to having it slightly set back or anything like that?
I think, so it comes up very close to that kitchen window, and that's the only window in the kitchen. And we wanted to provide the bedroom as much space as we could. Yeah. So that's why it's flush.
Perfect. It's helpful. All right. Any last questions for the applicant? All right. In that case, we'll move on to any other public testimony. Do we have any public comments on this application? Okay, hearing none. Then we will close the record for this application and move into board deliberations.
I would like to move for approval with conditions, and one of the conditions would be line item 2 of the McLaughlin letter on this, where the proposed window should be 1-to-1 double hung, either fiberglass or wood, with traditional window trim, a sill or an apron, so that they would match up.
Paul, is that for the new windows, not including?
For the new windows.
Not including the, I guess it's an aluminum window that would move to the front from the side?
It's
No,
vinyl.
it's a vinyl. The one that they pull out will be moved to the front. And that, based upon doing that.
And just for the record, I would try to, because I haven't touched any of the apron or the casing around the outside there, I would try to preserve that and reuse that if possible. But obviously I would match it if something went wrong.
That's helpful. But for future, since we closed the record, we can't have any new.
Oh,
You
sorry,
can't talk.
sorry. I'll close my mouth.
We have to, if we get new testimony from you, then we have to accept testimony from any other part.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Apologies.
This process. But that is helpful. Any other, before we move to motion, or any other comments or topics from other board members?
No, did Paul, I think Paul just made a motion though. So I would second that if that's what I heard.
Yes.
So just to clarify what the motion is, and then ask another question. So the motion was to approve with the three recommended conditions of approval and a fourth condition that it takes the language from the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association comments, number 2.
Yes.
Okay. Did you all have any direction on the shutters? They're proposed to include shutters. So we just want to make sure that that's
Moving the one shutter from of the window that's being pulled off and putting it in the front. In my opinion, that is acceptable. But in the shutters should not otherwise be included, or don't have to be included.
I'd kind of like to discuss that comment number 4 before we move into voting. If you're okay with that, I guess it's been seconded, so we can vote if you want to. But
No, I'll pull it back if you need to discuss it. That's fine.
okay, so I definitely agree with the comment that the siding, that style of siding, isn't something that would have been used in the neighborhood originally, and it's not something we would normally allow for new construction. But in this case, it's not pure new construction. It is compatible. So the question of whether it's more appropriate to match what's on the rest of the main structure, or to specify something that's kind of like that comment said, something that we would normally approve in the district, I think is something to think about. I'm not sure which is the most, the best solution in this case.
My opinion here is that if they could get something very close to what they have that's already there, that's existing, and you're differentiating with that, with a downspout or in one trim piece for the new part. But other than that, not try to make it tacky or tacked on, make it look as close as you can and make it look appropriate. Having the siding match up, in this case, I believe is appropriate because it doesn't detract and make it look something that's not acceptable.
Okay. I think I support that as well, if that's what the rest of the board thinks.
I'd agree with that. I think matching the existing siding is fine in this case. I also agree with the shutter moving to the front of the house. I don't necessarily have a problem with them adding shutters to the 2 side windows on the addition either. I think that the picture shows that they have them, right? For the other, I don't know what side it is.
Yeah, the 2 windows on the side, they're shown as with shutters.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that necessarily, but
I really don't either.
But yeah, it's
Okay. Very good. I think that's all the comments that were in the neighborhood association's letter. So in that case, I guess if we want to go back to the motion, I think we're probably ready for that.
If those could be added into the conditions of approval, I'll recommend that, I recommend we accept this with those conditions of approval.
just to clarify, Paul, we're talking about the 3 that Kelly has in the report plus the 4th, or are you wanting to add?
We're adding the one description on the appearance of the window, the proposed window, like that's spelled out.
Okay, so just that one. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if you were trying to add a 5th
No.
a 5th one. Okay. Then I will second that.
And what I have, I actually, just to provide clarity to everyone, I would add a 5th one based on what you all have said, that says the applicant may use the existing side window and shutters on the front of the addition. Am I getting that right?
Yes.
Yeah, I believe so.
yes.
And as shutters on the side as proposed are okay, it sounds like too.
I think if they can find a shutter that matches what they have.
Fab them.
Yeah, but we're not requiring them to put shutters on, is
No.
what I think Kelly is saying or is asking.
No.
Yeah. So we'll leave it up to the applicants to put them on or not put them on. So
I guess the application as submitted just shows a shutter outline. It doesn't show a design. Should we specify that the design should match if they're not on the side?
Yes.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay, I'm adding a 6th condition to require the shutters to match the existing.
see, Paul, I knew it.
Okay, I'll take the vote, if you all are ready.
Yes.
Board Member Ferry,
Aye.
Board Member Edgar,
Aye.
Board Member Stobie,
Yes.
and Chair Blythe.
Aye. Okay, congratulations and hope your project goes well. Be looking forward to seeing it completed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the 3rd public hearing on the agenda tonight, which is continuance of application GLUA 21-00015 and HR 21-00 008, historic review for exterior alterations to a non-contributing home in the Kinema National Register District at 601 4th Avenue. Kelly, are we continuing this application further? Or is that the?
What date certain?
Yes, the applicant has requested a continuance until September 28th. And has given us an extension to the 120-day deadline till November, to the end of November, which allows ample time to continue to a date certain of September 28th is the request.
Okay, but I think we can make that motion then, or do we, or can you just continue it?
I'll make a motion to, I guess, approve the continuance for GLUA 21-00015 HR 21-00008.
And I second it.
Like, to a date, does it need to be to a date certain?
Until September 28th, 2021.
Okay, Board Member Ferry,
Aye.
Board Member Edgar,
Aye.
Board Member Stobie,
Aye.
Chair Blythe.
Aye. All right, that concludes the public hearing portion of the agenda. We'll move on to other business. I think we can probably consider items 4 and 5 together, which is approval of minutes from the August 25th, 2020 meeting and September 30th, 2020 meeting. Do any of the board members have any comments or corrections or additions to any of those 2 minutes?
No.
No.
Neither do I.
Move it to approve as written.
I'll second.
Board Member Ferry,
Aye.
Board Member Edgar.
Aye.
Board Member Stobie,
Aye.
Chair Blythe.
Aye. Okay, and now we're on to item number 6, which is design advice for a new single-family home on the landmark property 412 Locust Street, which is the Rasmussen Hadley house. Kelly, did you have anything to share, or did you just go to the applicant for?
Sure, I can just give it a little intro and then let the applicant take it from there. And I have photos and plans that I can share as needed. So when that occurs, you can just tell me what you'd like me to put on the screen. So the Rasmussen Hadley house is a historic landmark. It's not in a district. So it's a landmark outside of a district on Locust Street, which is in the Berkeley Hills area. Just kind of as 7th Street turns and becomes Malala Avenue. So this house is at 412 Locust Street. It is a 10,000 square foot lot made up of 2 50 by 100 lots of record. And the house is actually situated not in the middle of those lots, but just on one of them. And so the second lot is vacant, and the owner has is hoping to kind of re-recognize that original lot line and then develop a new home on the second half of the property. So the entire property is still going to be within the historic overlay. So the new house, any new construction that's proposed there, we would really actually review it under the design guidelines for alterations, because it would be an alteration to an existing historic site. And I would also share that the way that I guess I would think about it is that, you've got the existing house, and whatever is built next to it these guidelines don't require that it match or mimic or copy the existing home, but rather that it can maybe borrow some elements from it that would be appropriate without really copying or mimicking. And then that it be of a simpler design. So the historic home It's a two-story home with a lot of nice architectural detail. And so whatever is built next to it should probably have less detail and be simpler so as not to detract or distract from the historic home. So that there might not be a lot of really specific details and guidelines that would apply in this case, but just kind of an overall, like what's the effect of this new house on the historic home. And I will, let me just pull up the plans. So the existing house is 2 stories. Here we go. So sorry, there you go. There's your lot. There's some mature trees. There's actually a heritage tree on this property in the backyard behind the house. And then there are some other mature trees as well. And my understanding is that the owners want to preserve all of the large trees. So I think the heritage tree is in the backyard. It's I want to say some sort of maple.
Northern red oak.
It's a red oak.
Thank you. Then there's the existing home there, a few different perspectives of it. Has a retaining wall in front, concrete retaining wall, but that retaining wall does not extend into the side yard. And then I will pull up the designs, the draft designs next.
I don't think I'm gonna be part of this.
Wait, you can just talk.
Yeah, okay.
So the proposed home is actually, it's a proposed 2-story house, but it's actually fairly small in square footage. And I think the key here that pops out to me is the 15-foot, here, I'll enlarge this a little bit, maybe so you guys can see it better. A 15-foot setback from this property line. And the existing house appears to be set back 13 feet. And I think providing a lot of separation is a good thing to let the historic house have that space around it and kind of preserve its environment. So I think that the approach here is a really good one. And I will just kind of leave it at that and show this on the screen. Oh, I will just add one little thing is that the little scroll work detail on the front porch is probably something that maybe would be a little bit too detailed. If we want to keep it simple and make it, you know, make the design not distract from the larger house. The scroll work might be a little too much. So, but that's just, you know, a comment. And just a reminder to the board members in design advice, anything you say during design advice is non-binding. It will become part of the record if this application is submitted as a formal application to the HRB. But none of your comments tonight are binding on any future decisions. And you're commenting as yourself as an individual board member and not commenting as a group tonight. Okay, I'll stop talking.
Thanks, Kelly. I don't know if the applicants want to introduce yourselves and if you have anything to add to what Kelly shared so far.
Well, I'm the owner of the property. I'm Claudia Howell, and Bob Vetter is the person who's designing the house, and I'll let him talk.
Oh, okay. Let's see. So Claudia just wanted a modest house that is in keeping with the neighborhood, and I thought that's what we came up with. We have given deference to the larger house. The pine tree, the Douglas fir tree that you see there, that's Claudia owns that. The large oak tree on the original property we've tried to stay away from that oak tree as much as we can, and we tried to stay away from the Douglas fir as much as we can. The oak tree is probably 100 plus years old. The Douglas fir is probably 80. They don't appear on this view, but there's also two very large trees on the property on the left. One is an incense cedar, and there's a cedar of Lebanon. We've designed the house as it is so that the ridge is east-west. So the back of the house, the roof on the back of the house faces due south. Claudia at some point wants to add solar panels, and the design of the house lends itself to that. Again, it's very modest. There's the view from the back. The roof pitch is 5 and 12. In all of the roofs, has a small covered porch in the back. What you see there in the corner of that bay window is the dining room. And again, it faces due south. It's meant to be a passive solar feature. It has a total of 5 windows and those 3 skylights. It'll be a wonderful room to be in. It will absorb a lot of sun in the winter. And with solar panels on the 2nd floor, should be able to come close to powering the house. Beyond that, it's 1,000 square foot house. We tried to give deference to the larger, more detailed house, to the original house. And I will look forward to your comments.
Okay, very good. Any board members, if you're ready?
Can I see a picture of the porch that's on the original house, the front porch? If we could bring up. I'm just interested in the roof design of the porch. After looking at the roof design on the back of the house. Okay, I'm just.
Cantilevered. Sort of in there.
Okay. It extends over the porch. The whole house does. Okay.
That's slightly difficult to do.
I know.
Structurally nowadays.
Yeah.
Shear transfer and so forth becomes problematic in that. And frankly, Claudia doesn't want the room. I mean, she doesn't.
Fine.
This is backwards to what you normally see. She wants a small house. Probably what you're used to seeing is they want big houses.
No, I was just trying. If on the back of the house, you have a flat one without hips on it. And I was trying to think if on the front of the house, if that was without hips, how it would look.
Oh.
Kind of matching up the front roof design to the back roof design over the front porch.
Well, I think that the front porch with the hips is more historically
appropriate,
accurate, more appropriate. Yeah. See, it's held in from the side a couple of feet. There's some deference. You'll never see the roof in the back from the street. There is an alleyway behind this, but once fences are in and once landscaping's in, you'll never, and with the house to the left and so forth, you'll never see both of them from the street. So I think both elevations are somewhat isolated. They need to relate, of course, but they don't have to be the same elevation because you can't see them both. The back of the house is somewhat more modern. It's trying to take advantage of the sun, solar access, so forth and so on. The front of the house is much more in keeping with the historic neighborhood, the historic character.
I have a question about that because this is very folk Victorian to me, and
Yeah,
the original house is more of a craftsman house.
yeah.
So why did you decide to go with a completely different historical style?
It matches the rest of the neighborhood, I guess. Oh, and I lived in a house that looked very similar to this. To be quite honest, that was it. I mean, the porch and so forth is in keeping with the neighborhood in general. We didn't try to ape, we didn't try to use the vocabulary of the existing house. We tried to set this aside as a composition of its own.
My only thought is that this looks very much to me to be, it looks like it's almost trying to replicate a historic home as opposed to be compatible within a neighborhood and compatible within the house to the craftsman style house that it's sitting next to, the original house, the house you currently live in.
Yeah. I don't think the existing house is craftsman. That's more.
It's got craftsman details. It's got the brackets.
It does.
Got
the roof is much steeper. Typically, a craftsman house has 3 and 12, 4 and 12 roof pitches, that sort of thing. I think the roof pitches on that are 8 and 12 or 9 and 12. It's very steep. It's got dormers. Craftsman houses typically don't have the peaked dormers. So it's sort of it's a builder Victorian, I suppose, or a builder craftsman, which is very common 100 years ago.
Right, of course. Apologies. I'll lend the floor to anybody else. I need to switch places with my children, so I'm gonna need to go downstairs. Hang on one second.
Good luck with that.
I guess one question I had was about the pitch of the main roof is probably a little bit flatter than what most of our design guidelines would call out.
It's easily changed. The 5 and 12 works best for the solar panels, but the 6 and 12, 8 and 12, I mean, it simply, it's a minor change. I tried to keep the roof low so that it's not a major feature of the facade. Making it a steeper roof makes it a much more a focal point of what you see. Though this doesn't really give a very good representation of what you'll see because the roof, the lot has a slight slope to it. So you'd actually be, eye level would probably be at the top of the rail on when you're on the sidewalk, when you're in the street. The eye level would probably be the top of the rail. So you would be looking up at it slightly. Having the lower roof de-emphasizes that from the view from the street.
Sure. I would when you submit your final application, if the final design that you submit differs from what's in the design guidelines, I would make sure to lay out the reasoning behind that and how it relates to the total height relative to the roof pitch and total height of the historic home next to it. And, you know, I think there are potentially some good reasons for keeping the roof lower, keep the massing smaller than, you know, the historic house. But if it is different than the design guidelines, I would make sure to specifically lay out your, thought process behind that. Another question I had was on the front, first story behind the porch there, there's only, it appears just to be that kind of that one small window far to the side.
Because there's a stairway
Yeah, that's what
up to the second floor.
that's what the staircase is.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense now that I think about it.
I could put in a fake window,
No, you can't put in a fake window.
a framework of a window.
Kelly, can I ask Kelly a question? Is this property designated on the national as a nationally registered historic house?
I don't think so.
And if so, I was going back and thinking about the kind of the guidelines that they have for additions to historic, the federal guidelines is kind of a way to look at what they say when if it's a federally recognized house, how compatible the addition should be under those circumstances. And and so this, whether it's nationally registered, could have a bearing in interpretation of of the degree of compatibility.
Yeah, so I'll double check that it's not on the register, but National Register status is really just recognition. And Oregon City's design guidelines for alterations that we would actually use in this case, we take the language straight from the Secretary of Interior. So you're right, Paul, like the city's local design guidelines for alterations are the national kind of guidance from the Secretary of Interior.
So the difference, like at the Rose House, those are national, have landmark status, and this is definitely not considered landmark status. I have to, so.
Yeah, I don't see, so it's not coming up in the national database, and it's not listed. It usually, our inventory form would usually identify if it's listed nationally. So it's considered a landmark locally, but not nationally.
Yeah, he's big. I smell the dog. Anyone?
Other comments or topics or items to discuss?
I would like to see the porch apron come all the way down to the ground so that that there's no ability to see under unless there's some horizontal lattice that would go down, but that the porch is
integrated into the ground.
Yeah.
I'm kind of stuck with the vocabulary of this program, and I couldn't figure out how to do that. But eventually, there will be an apron so that you don't see the foundations, you don't see the 4x4s, you don't see the structural part of the building or of the deck.
I figured that was likely the case, but yeah, usually we specify some sort of screening there. Usually,
yeah, that'll be that. I couldn't figure out how to do it with the darn program, so it will eventually be on the plans.
And then,
I would, honestly, I would love to see the porch almost extend out, or not almost, extend out to the side of the house so that it's the porch is the full width of the house as against inset. It just, that it has kind of rings a bell of how I've seen in period houses and front porches.
Oh, we can certainly do that. It's easy to do, but driving around the neighborhood, having that slight inset seems to be consistent with houses that are like this. I mean, we will design what you will approve, and having it the full width is very easy to do. In fact, one of the first iterations had it the full width. We actually chopped off a couple of feet on both sides to give it that little reveal, that little additional depth and character.
I don't know if you guys would be able to see this, but I found an image which is very much like the house that you're proposing.
That kind of looks like it, doesn't it?
It does. And I think that the big difference, it is inset on the hipped roof on the porch, but the difference is that the width of the where it attaches to the house is much greater. So it's wider. And
I see. You mean
a little bit more balance.
Yeah.
Because right now the hipped roof is pointing directly to those two windows that are in the center.
What that would do is that currently that's the same 5 and 12 pitch as the upper roof.
Mm-hmm.
To get that effect, you would have to lower the pitch to say 3 and 12 or 4 and 12. If you lower the pitch, the wider that flat area, for lack of a better term.
I would like that. I like that idea.
Would you not be able to just extend it out and it would actually steepen the pitch on the sides, but not on the front?
The framing on that is very difficult. The framers would be excited to see something like that. We can. It's not what's usually done.
Well, I just, it's just sometimes with historical styles, getting the proportions and the balance really kind of like make them.
Yeah. But lowering the pitch to 3 and 12, it again de-emphasizes the roof, and it does make it wider. Having multiple pitches, the reason I had them the same 5 and 12 is having a bunch of different roof pitches, especially on a single structure like what's over the porch, is jarring to my eye. Having the ends be picking numbers out of a hat, 7 and 12, and the front pitch being 5 and 12, that would be jarring to me. A typical hip roof it's the same pitch all the way around, 4 and 12, 5 and 12, what have you, but it's typically always the same pitch. Because it's easier to frame. I mean, hip roofs are by nature difficult to frame. Having them be different pitches become exceptionally difficult to frame.
Okay. Yeah.
But we're just trying to make a modest, oldish looking house to fit into what is really a very eclectic neighborhood. Right next door, there's 50s and 60s ranchers with brick and so forth, some with very bad additions added onto them with T111 plywood. We're just trying to give deference to the older houses in the neighborhood, use their vocabulary, and create a modest, comfortable home.
Understood.
I would love to see a nice wood door in the front, or something that
It is a door.
that I would not like. A metal door or something like this doesn't seem to.
Oh, oh, it's the same thing. That eventually we'll put on an attractive door. I had to generate these plans quickly, and I didn't concentrate. I didn't concentrate on the door, but an attractive, age-appropriate door will eventually go in. Something that's welcoming. Yeah, it's not meant to be a metal door with a big keep out sign on it. I don't think that would be historically significant, historically accurate. Yeah, again, it's what the program offers. It offers a tremendous amount, but it takes time to put it all together. And one Friday, I was told that if we get this in by Monday, we can get on the study session for the 22nd or whatever, for the 25th. So this design and all of its detailing was generated over a weekend.
Sure. I think you did a great job on the overall massing design, the placement on the site relative to the trees, the historic home. I think you nailed all that, and then we'll be looking for some of the those final details to be refined in the final application, and go from there.
Yeah, I guess I have to ask, Claudia told me not to, about the roof pitch. I've got it at 5 and 12, and that was mostly driven by solar access. Should it be higher? Is there a consensus on that?
I don't see any reason why it would need to be.
Okay.
I just closed them.
I personally like a little steeper pitch, but but again, your logic on compatibility for solar mitigates that.
I'm from California, and for the last 10 years, we've had to design specifically for solar access. So it's kind of something that I've been trained on. I'm sure that's coming to Oregon soon, but in California, all new houses have to specifically address how you're going to put solar panels on the roof and how you're going to make them as efficient as you can. So that's been my training, for lack of a better term, for a number of years.
I actually like the lower pitch specifically because it differentiates it from an actual historical home. I feel like sometimes when you're trying to work within a style, you need to take details of it and portions of it, but you also need to make sure that somebody doesn't drive by and say like, oh, look at that old house, they changed the siding. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yes. We tried to use the vocabulary of the neighborhood with an attractive, modest house that is an asset to the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think again, I would just make sure that you lay out the reasoning in the application, because that's something we get public comments on a lot. And the design guidelines, I think, would probably, depending on which style you applied here, would say something like a not less than 812 or something like that. So
yeah.
So anytime you deviate from that, then
We need to explain. Okay.
And no vinyl windows, please.
Okay. How come?
It's in our code, we try to, we don't look at vinyl windows. We look at fiberglass or something that's paintable
Okay.
as more design compatible.
All right. But gee, you can replace the windows in 30 years. I'm sorry. You can replace the plastic windows in 30 years with something else.
Yeah, but by that time they will have yellowed.
Yeah, I mean, you can replace the aluminum windows in 25 years with plastic, and then you can replace the plastic windows and, sorry. Sorry. My client told me to shut up, so I will.
Okay.
I hope you took it as humor.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, any other comments or questions? All right, well, thanks for coming to the meeting, and we'll be looking forward to looking at the final application.
Well, thank you very much for your time and your comments. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And how do we get out of here?
Moving on, the last item on the agenda is
Probably just go push the red button.
the compatible change project. Kelly mentioned that since we have gone a couple hours already, that we could defer this item to one of our upcoming meetings if we'd like. I don't know how everyone else on the board feels.
I'm agreeable.
Yeah.
I'm okay with going, but if you guys want to defer, it's fine.
You know, whatever you want to do, I've got time.
Ray?
Let's go. Let's do it.
Okay, I guess the choice is do it unless you're trying to get kids to bed, Kelly, or something.
I'm in the office right now.
Oh, okay.
But
You've got kids, so-
I hope they're in bed.
All right, let's go ahead and do it then.
Okay. I will pull up the information here. So what I did is just included the presentation from last work session that we talked about, that had the results of all of the public engagement that we did. So I will just remind you of what the alternatives are and what the popular ones were. And then I have some like potential code amendments for discussion. So I think it's also helpful that we had the Center Street application today, because that was a perfect example of this code in action. So, you know, they passed the 30% threshold with their size, their addition size. That size addition on a larger house would not reach a threshold, right? So if we were dealing with a larger, you know, 1,500 or 2,000 square foot home, then that little 289 square foot addition for the master bedroom that we saw today wouldn't even make its way to you as the historic review board, because it would be too small and it wouldn't be 30%. But anyway, that being said, I will share this screen and talk to you about the different alternatives that we looked at. So first one is keeping the current code in place of the 30% threshold and clarifying what we mean by gross floor area. And that would really not really change much. The second one was to reduce that 30% to 20%. that might lead to a few more projects being triggered for historic review. So it would increase your workload and staff's workload, and but it might lead to more compatibility, because you would be capturing more projects. I think one of our kind of decision criteria or goals of the project was to not overburden property owners. So people who bought their property knowing that it's not a designated property and that they would have flexibility and wouldn't have to necessarily come to the board if they wanted to build an addition. If we change that, then or vastly or greatly reduce the threshold, then that could kind of eat into that that expectation or our goal of kind of respecting the non-designated status of those structures. So number 2 is to, instead of using a percentage, use a flat square footage. So for example, 350 square feet. Or for a commercial space, maybe 1,000 square feet. So that is going to be really straightforward for everyone to use, but it would also not necessarily be as equitable. I mean, it depends on how you look at that, right? So for a smaller home, that would give them more flexibility for adding square footage. For a larger home, then 350 is probably going to be less than 30%. That likely would not have a huge effect on like the amount of staff time or HRB time that is taken up reviewing these projects. And the reason that considering city resources, one of the project goals is that, I think we want to just make sure that if we do change our code and it results in a huge increase in the number of applications that would come our way, that we have to really understand that. And currently we don't have a budget to increase our staffing. So the third alternative was to combine the percentage with a change in height. So if an addition results in a change in height to make a structure that is taller than 25 feet, no matter if that addition is like 50 square feet or 500, that would come to the board. So that's a little bit more complicated for people to kind of understand and for us to catch and for us to measure. But I think we did hear from folks that they kind of liked this height thing. It's just a matter of, do we want to make it any change in height, or like what's the right number if we're going to put a number on it. So that was kind of the tricky part of that one. And then the fourth option was combining, sorry, I'm looking sideways because my screen is over here. I have two screens over going on, but combination of 1 and 2, where you say 30% or 350 square feet, whichever is less. And so that exact number, maybe it's not 350, maybe it's something else. But that was the alternative 4. So the other ones that we considered but rejected were to reduce the threshold percentage to 10%. That just seemed too low, and it almost resulted in us treating non-designated structures the same way that we treat designated structures. And we want to avoid that for kind of legal reasons and all of that. Another one is to add a type 2 review. So that would mean that like for these non-designated structures, they could just go through a staff level review process that would require us to write some clear and objective standards for what those additions look like. And then I would just write a staff report, and that would be appealable, but it would not come to the board. So that wouldn't save that much time. It might save, it would create a more certainty and clarity for folks. But the timing would be about the same, and we would have to write those standards, which I think would be tricky. Knowing how our guidelines are tricky already, to write standards would be a lot of, I think, hard work. And it would be probably controversial. Adding additions to the front only and reviewing just those that are on the front, that was rejected. One, because all sides of the structure matter, according to some folks that we talked to, and because it's kind of open to interpretation of what's the front. You know, if you're adding something on the side, like the one we saw today, you know, what if it's set back from the front a little bit? Is that still front? You know, so it's going to be harder to define. And so those three alternatives there were rejected. The results of our open house and survey were that alternative 3, the one that referred to height, and then alternative 4 that combined the percentage and the flat square footage were the most popular. Got to take the results with a grain of salt though, because, you know, the total number here is 8. So 8 people, you know, liked alternative 3. So we didn't have a whole lot of responses is what I'm trying to say. And so we didn't really hear from a lot of the property owners that we're talking about of non-designated structures. So just to review, alternative 3 is that 25-foot one, and alternative 4 is the either or. And I'm going to pull up my recommendation now. Or sorry, not the recommendation, but the potential code language that we can discuss. So I'm not recommending any particular of those alternatives to you right now, but I've just pulled up some language that could help us better define area and capture, here we go. You guys seeing that? This text here. Okay, sorry, it took me, you probably saw me clicking around trying to find it. Sorry about that. So the new construction, I think the red line language is what would be added. So it would be clarified to say any building addition of new or reconstructed floor area, meaning if you take off the attic space and then you rebuild it back, that's reconstructed. So we're not looking at cumulative, you know, change. We're looking at just, you know, after you do your demo, what's the new square footage? That's 30% or more in finished above ground floor area. So somebody's basement is finished or not finished, it's not going to affect this calculation. And if they're, I guess, you know, if there's garage space, attached garage, something like that, that would not count either. So we're talking just about finished, you know, heated above ground floor area for our denominator. So that's our suggested language to kind of clarify that. So this code change could be as simple as just adding this language or kind of modifying this definition in this way. Or it could be, you know, more a more substantive change where we go with one of those alternatives that's been suggested. One of the other alternatives is to the status quo. There's also a component of the definition of demolish, and this is really just clarifying. It doesn't change anything. It's just to clarify that demolition review only occurs when they're demolishing a designated structure. So we don't review demolitions of non-designated structures, and we don't, but the language is a little confusing and can be interpreted either way. And so this would kind of clear up that issue. And then just to give you some simple examples of the 30%, here's some, just if you can read those, just some different sizes and what that would mean. So I'm really just looking for any thoughts from you, if you, and direction for me as far as developing any sort of new code language other than what I showed you, and or if you have any comments on the code language that I just showed you.
Kelly, I think you said last time that this was brought about because of something that happened that was unfavorable to the district, the McLaughlin district. Is that right? And so we're just trying to catch. Are we trying to catch more before it happens?
Yeah. So this reworded definition here with the
reconstructed part.
words. Yeah, that would take care of the issue that happened last year in McLaughlin or
Okay.
2 years ago. So that was like almost the entire home was remodeled, but in reality, it was pulled down almost completely with just one wall standing, and then reconstructed with a much larger second story than what was originally there. It was kind of like a half story or a finished attic, and then it was like a whole new tall second story. And when you compared the old square footage to the new, the additional square footage was only 19%, but the effect of the work that was done made the house look twice as big. And so whether or not that the design of that was okay or not, I think that wasn't necessarily the question. It was just like, whoa, that house looks like it doubled in size. Why did this not come to the board?
I see.
So this language here would probably take care of that. And I think while we're looking at it, we kind of wondered if we're even like going about this the right way by using this percentage, right? And so that's why we asked the community what they thought. And we also did some research on other jurisdictions as well. And so that's where we kind of pulled some of our alternatives, is because other jurisdictions don't necessarily use a percentage either. They use a flat square footage in some cases, or a lot of various things. And I have the information that's been part of, that's part of everything. And so I probably should have attached that for you, but it informed our alternatives. And I'm happy to pull that up and share it if you want to see what some of the other jurisdictions do.
Hang on 1 second. I'm so sorry.
Kelly, it is in a 1.5 stories. If somebody was to take the second 1.5 story floor space that is not necessarily, does not have 7.5 foot ceilings across it. Is there any calculation on that as far as what is measurable?
So if there's an existing attic space that's unfinished and they want to finish it?
Yeah.
Well, I think on a non-designated structure, if they're just finishing that, and they're not adding anything new, that wouldn't come to us.
Okay.
So it's got to be like new floor area. Yeah, new or reconstructed. I think I get your point, though, that we might need to clarify that and say that finishing existing space in the attic or basement is not considered new.
Yeah. If we're not changing the roof line,
Any change to roof line?
Yeah, that would be something to consider. It kind of goes, it's another way of looking at the height requirement, I guess, is the roof line sort of.
Yeah. I mean, we do see people adding dormers a lot, which changes the roof line, but doesn't really involve adding, like, I don't think that typically involves like a 30% increase in square footage.
yeah,
But it does change the roof line. So I think that's an interesting question. Is like, would you want to review just an added dormer to a non-designated house? Or like under what circumstances would that trigger? Or is it, or would dormers be exempt?
yes.
It's tricky to make it, we want to make it as clear as possible for the homeowners that don't deal with it every day, so that they don't have to think too hard about what cars are not, but then also not allow, corner cases that can slip through the requirements too easily.
And we haven't, I mean, in the past like 10 to 15 years, we really haven't had many applications that have come up for these types. I mean, this one that we just reviewed today, is the first one in a long time that the board has looked at. And I don't know. I mean, I haven't heard of a bunch that have just like happened without illegally, I guess. I mean, I think that we probably would know, we would find out. And because it always requires a building permit, like we catch it. So it just there haven't been a lot of these in McLaughlin in the recent past. But I think that with the economy the way it is and property values so high, and like the House Bill 2001 allowing people to do duplexes and internal conversions and things, like there might be more interest out there in adding on to these existing homes. So we might see more and more.
Right. The one example that we looked at, even though it was a major height change in the house, it seems like just the percentage should have caught it. If, to me, the height of that square footage on the second floor or attic space wouldn't have qualified. I don't know. I feel like, isn't there some, when you, I don't know, I have a loft above my garage, and I feel like when you count the square footage of it, you can't count the portion that's less than so many feet high, like in the corner.
Yes.
And I feel like if that standard had been applied in that case, there's no way that wouldn't have met the existing 30%. I would have thought, just by looking.
Right. That's what we thought too. And we did that calculation to make sure. And it was 19%. So they actually had quite a bit of like area up there with high enough ceilings before the project that it didn't look like that house could accommodate. I mean,
Right.
it was surprising.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm so sorry, I missed some of this, but this discussion. But have we talked about whether or not what do we think about like a flat square footage versus a percentage? So when you were going through, you had said that you didn't think that number 2 or option 2 with the flat square footage was as equitable as a percentage. Is that right, Kelly?
Yeah, it totally depends on how you view that.
Equitability. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
because I actually thought that it was more equitable because it didn't favor people who had larger homes and possibly more money to like add more space onto their house, right? And so, if we were to code shift, I think I kind of like, I like option 4 because the 350 square feet sort of captures anything that's significant on a structure, and it's equitable, but you guess you do need that 30% in there to catch some of the smaller end. So like a 1,200 square foot house would be roughly 350 square foot. So anything smaller than that, you could add significant portions onto the house without actually meeting that the 350 square foot ratio, right? Like, so if you had an 800 square foot house, 350 square feet is much larger than 30% of the structure. I don't know, those are just my thoughts about that. I did have a question about in 1A. So it says floor area to include above ground finished space, habitable space only, no base fits, unfinished attics or garages included in the calculation. I questioned whether or not that could be interpreted as in if you add a garage on or an unfinished attic, that's not included in the calculation of the finished addition. I know that, I think that the intention is that it's to calculate the percentage of the addition, but I mean, if we were to go something like that, I'd just say maybe a clarification that that's just specifically for calculating the size of the addition and not necessarily the addition, size of the addition.
That's the denominator, but the numerator can include any new square footage, whether it's finished or not.
Oh, okay.
Right. I mean, I think that's what you're saying. Right?
Yeah,
So,
I'm saying, yeah.
So another example we had last year is a detached garage of 400 square feet was proposed on a non-designated property. And so that because that was greater than 200 square feet, which is the current, so it's 30%. And then if for a new standalone structure, the threshold is 200 square feet. So that detached garage did get reviewed by the board. And so the alternative 4, if you said 350 square feet or 30%, I think if the board thought it was appropriate, then maybe that 350 square feet would apply to the standalone detached structures as well, potentially. Or you could keep it at 200.
How big a factor is standalone detached buildings in what has come before you?
I've had just that one garage. And then when I look back, at other examples, I think there may have been a couple of other like detached, maybe a garage or an ADU that was over 200 square feet that was reviewed. But it's rare. It has been fairly rare.
Kelly, were you guys going to do some more public outreach to try and, I think you had mentioned trying to reach people who this would actually affect? Our intern's time expired
So we had paid him for the number of hours that we had grant funding for, and that's ended in March. So we don't have any one on board to do a whole lot more work on that. And you know, any code change would go through the legislative process, which would involve sending public notices in the mail to anyone who's affected. So those folks would get notified that way for sure. You know, if the board, I mean, I think we always could do more. So, you know, if that's the board's desire or recommendation, then I'm sure we can figure out something we could do.
Eight respondents is not very many.
Well, eight that voted for that one,
Okay.
but not 8 total. Yeah, it was more than that total.
But not many more.
I think that the outreach, I mean, it was done pretty well. I don't know that we would get a substantially better answer by doing, you know, there's kind of diminishing returns on more effort, I think. So in my mind, you know, it's time to kind of support a change likely, and there may be something that slips through or it's not perfect in all cases, but I don't know that there's a lot more that can really be learned.
Personally, I went over this and in detail, and when I came out of it, I was still in a quandary as to exactly what is best. I at this point, I don't. I've thought about it, but I'm just I'm trying to figure out what makes the most sense, and I haven't got that figured out yet.
So what's the best path forward, Kelly? Do we want to try to come up with a concurrence on the board of what we support to then send to the city commission? Is that the idea?
Yeah, that would be the process. The board would send a recommendation to the city commission, and we would start the legislative process to amend the code accordingly.
I would love to talk to the land use committee of McLaughlin, or have some input from them as to what their thoughts are.
We did meet with them early on, and there were some interviews as well with some of those folks. But now that we maybe if there's some proposal that you'd like to share with them and get their feedback on, like something specific now, I think that's something that we can do. Send it off to them.
I think there's notes somewhere from all the interviews that he did, right? I think I personally like 3, I think. That's the height and or area. But I'm not dead set in stone or anything. I think I think either 3 or 4 are both good improvements.
I will add to that, we would probably do a work session with the city commission before we would start the legislative process. So if the board has like a couple of options it thinks are the best, then, you know, those can be brought to the commission in a work session. I think we just don't want to go to the commission with like such an open-ended, like, oh, here are all 4 options. We'd like to go with some sort of, you know, vetted, pared down options to look at.
That makes sense.
I think 3 does a good job of capturing, if we get the height right, the case of changing a 1.5 story structure to a 2.5 story, you know, without increase or you know, without changing the square footage much, which is what happened. So I like that. And I could see where that could happen again.
And would that maintain the 30% addition as well for any structure that doesn't just change in height?
It could or it couldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think as written, we would, yeah, it would be the height change or the square footage change.
Yeah. And it says A or B, and I think, no. I think the 30% is, it seems to be capturing what it needs to capture, Kelly, you think? Yeah. My only like hesitation about that is that if you had like a very large house, and I don't know the largest houses in the McLaughlin Conservation District, what size they get to, but like if you had, I don't know, like a 4,000 square foot house, then you could add like 1,500 square feet onto it, couldn't you? And maybe with 30% and still be under. It just seems like with a larger structure, which could make a larger impact within the neighborhood, you could still create a very large impact upon what that structure looked like, with still maintaining, still within the 30%.
Yeah, I can definitely think of a few houses that a 29% change would be pretty huge.
And the one from today is interesting because it was, you know, marginally more than 30%. It's only 289 square feet. You know, is that something that like you think that you should be reviewing, or, you know, did that addition have you know, an impact on the district, enough to review it, I guess, is an interesting question to think about now that we've just done it.
Yeah. I think based on what I know about the residents in the neighborhood and the neighborhood association and them submitting the comments that they did, that generally they want that sort of stuff to be reviewed. And if they saw that, you know, type of project going on that, you know, without review, there'd be ruckus, you know, among certain people.
So these are structures, both residential and commercial, right?
Correct.
There's no separation between, so there are a couple, well, I know of one in McLaughlin that could, a commercial property that could exceed that 30% possibly. If the owners ever wanted to do something different with it, but that's Singer Hill Cafe.
Sure, yeah, there are a lot of commercial structures in the district
Yeah.
that are not designated.
So let's keep, I guess we have to keep that in mind too, because we've been talking a lot about how does this affect residences, residential buildings, houses.
And I will say, I will add that commercial structures have to go through a staff level site plan design review through our citywide code. And we have design standards that apply in that case. They're not the same as the historic design guidelines, but they do maintain like some level of quality of design and materials, but not.
So they
quite.
have just an extra layer of. Okay, makes sense. All right.
I guess what I'll say is you're not going to see a commercial addition with no windows and T111 siding or so, added in if you're not reviewing it, because that wouldn't be approved by our citywide code.
Kelly, is this our sort of last sort of meeting on this, or do we all want to think about it and come back to it, or?
You're more than welcome to come back to it. Take as long as you need to.
Does the commission need does the commission have a certain deadline?
No.
No.
We keep moving it. They're very busy. Their agendas are packed. So I don't think that it would be, that they would get upset if we had to push it out longer.
But these proposed in red that are currently on the screen, these changes are going to happen.
No. So this is just like my stab at refining the definition.
Mm-hmm.
And then if the board also wants to change the threshold,
I see.
Yeah, we would incorporate that change, and then it would go as a package code amendment.
I see. Okay.
I would love to see this put off to a later date and more time to think about it.
I think I agree. I think it's been very helpful to hear what other board members think about it, and hear have increased information from you, Kelly, just being able to talk about it. So what do you think, Grant?
Yeah, I'm okay with deferring it a bit. I think Ray and I have probably heard it more than the other two of you, since we were around when it all kind of kicked off, a little more deeply involved.
Oh, so this has been going on for a while?
Yeah, I mean, the original project started, I don't know how long back, but a year ago maybe, or.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that.
Late 19 or early 20.
I see. So you guys have already had conversations about this?
Yeah.
Apologies, I didn't know.
But I don't think there's any imminent pressure to wrap it up either. If you want to take another month to kind of review the materials, and then we can make a recommendation at the next meeting.
I would like that.
Yes.
And I think there are a whole, I know I did one of the interviews with the intern and all that. And so I think there's a whole packet of other stuff of what people's opinions were and the research, and that's deeper than just the final presentation that's in the agenda tonight.
I could send all that off to you later this week, since it's all already public information. It's been on our agendas before. So I'll just email it to you individually, so that you have it at your fingertips, and you can have like the whole month then to look it over at your leisure.
That would be great. Thank you.
All right, very good. In that case, I guess we'll pick it up next meeting then and go from there.
Sounds great.
Right, any communications?
Only communications I have, we have a new neighbor that moved into Kinema, and I brought her over a nomination document, a copy. I talked to her briefly, and I said, and she said, "Oh, I'm interested in finding out a little bit more about the history of Kinema." And so I printed one off and took it over and just kind of talked a little bit about some of the stuff. But I think we really need to be doing greater contact of new residents to make sure that when they come into, somebody comes into Kinema or McLaughlin, that they're not blindsided by historic district codes, and they have some idea that there is something that they should be in compliance with, or be at least understand or be able to reference. And sometimes far too much, I believe they don't. So I think that's a mistake on our part, or somehow we need to come up with a better way of making sure that people understand that they're bought a house in a historic district.
I still think that starts with their realtor, but that's my opinion.
I think that the realtors are more interested in selling the house than getting into the weeds.
Depends on who you talk to, what kind of realtor, because I know both sides of that spectrum. I'm sure you do too.
Yes, absolutely. But I'm just trying to be fair with anybody that comes in, to make sure that they're not blindsided. I think that that's responsible on our part to figure out a better way of doing it.
Yeah, and I think, for me, who doesn't live in either one of our designated areas, I have to try and use other channels that I know, rather than it'd be great to just be able to be a good neighbor and go out there and say hello. Hey, did you know you're part of Kinema? No, what's that? Oh, well, let me tell you. So, yeah, if we could raise awareness and raise our level of engagement, we'll all benefit.
If I was to buy a house in an HOA district, there would be definitely somebody explaining to me what the codes are and what are the standards that are being set in that housing district or authority. And I just think that we need to be doing a better job in our historic districts.
We need to anoint some ambassadors that can introduce themselves as the official ambassador of the historic district. Give themselves cover when they go and start talking to the new folks in the neighborhood.
Well, if you think about it, that's what the neighborhood association, they are. They are the ambassadors.
Yeah.
We should be doing something, and I feel that it's difficult to be able to feel for sure that the real estate people are doing what they should be doing. And yet, as you stated, some are and some are not. So I just don't like the odds.
No, and I understand that. But again, the neighborhood associations, they're stakeholders in helping their neighbors understand what it means to be a homeowner in either of those two neighborhoods, or if they happen, I see maybe our role more with the I don't know how many properties are out there that are designated structures like the one we talked about tonight. But those who aren't in a neighborhood, those are the ones that are kind of left out, not knowing what to do. I think the NAs are the ones that have more at stake. I mean, you, for example, Paul, you're a great ambassador for Kinema.
It feels as if that I'm on the edge of compromising myself or compromising the process. And so what I feel like that if I'm out trying to talk to somebody, I start shutting up because I don't want to be put myself in a position of compromising myself from being able to make it an honest judgment. And so I would love to see almost a standardized care package, and I would love to even propose trying to get some grant money to be able to create a packet that would be capable of being given to people who buy houses into some of these areas, where we try to do have a more official way, almost a welcoming pack.
We have that.
Welcomes. What?
We have one. I send it out to, there's a time lag in when we get the data about new homeowners, but when we get it, then we mail out a welcome packet with information about the historic districts and the grant program. And so I think the hard part is sometimes we don't get the information for months after people move in. And so they maybe start on some projects and they haven't gotten it yet. I'm happy to make some of those packets available to neighborhood associations so they can hand them out themselves. And also, if you're just greeting people or talking to them, you can certainly just tell them to contact the city or contact me if they ever have questions about, doing work on their house. And then, if they do end up coming in for an HRB application, then all you have to do is at the hearing is disclose that you told them to contact the city. And there's no problem there with conflict or anything.
Okay. I'm gonna try that. I'm gonna make that suggestion. But I hope that we can beef it up and make sure that we're doing what we need to do. Whatever we kind of review it to make sure that people are responsibly informed.
I think our role is more support for the NAs. I think they should be taking lead on those introductions and making and once in a while having one of us go with them on a couple of visits. But I personally, I think they're the ambassadors for where they live. They should be the ones to lead that charge.
Yeah, I agree with Ray. I don't want to, be
I don't think that's in our job description as a board member, but definitely would be happy to support.
Anything else? Real quick, I was gonna just say, I don't think it's totally closed out just yet, but I've been following the open appeals on the cottages and things, and based on some of the comments and stuff from the city commission, I think maybe, I don't know if we need to, just for future, get some clarification on how we should think about situations where we have, deviations from an approved application or some after the fact, and what should be considered and what shouldn't. Because what I did notice is that there was sort of a lot of the things that came up both in our discussions and the city commission's discussions and otherwise differ based on sort of the framework of how you're looking at it, as opposed to the actual content, whether you're taking into consideration the costs of making the change or the impact, as opposed to how you would consider something up front. So I don't know if, with Carrie or something, we should get some sort of guidelines written to help with that process again. Because I think I don't know, I think I felt a little bit caught flat-footed on how exactly to think about it and what to consider or not consider, if that makes sense. So
I'd be happy to ask Carrie to kind of follow up with you all on that next time she joins us. Yeah, I think that the HRB's findings, from what I understand and with Carrie, is that your findings are perfectly defensible, like legally defensible, as are the city commission's. The approval criteria is subjective. And I think that's what makes it difficult. Your job is difficult and theirs is too. And reasonable minds can disagree. And I think that's a lot of it. But I'll ask Carrie to speak to your question about like the framework.
okay.
Do we need to, or should we talk about addressing Carrie's departure? A different, it's a Carrie Cook, not, yeah.
Yeah, so she was in the McLaughlin neighborhood position on the board. And since we have Sabrina on the board also as a McLaughlin resident, that gives us, I guess, more flexibility to fill the position. I'm checking the website now to see if the city recorder has posted the vacancy. It looks like we haven't posted a vacancy yet, or asked for applications. So if you have any direction you want to give us on that or thoughts, since you did have interviews recently and there were other folks interested in the position.
That's my thought. Those are my thoughts right there, is can we revisit the applicants from last time, reach out to them and see if they are still interested in joining?
Absolutely.
And based off our scores, our ranks, can we ask the last person, the first one out, so whoever that was? What are
Yeah, I don't know
the
what your
parameters around that?
Yeah, I think you can do that. I'm not sure I think we would probably be able to figure out who was the kind of second candidate. I can ask the city recorder if that's possible. Like if we have, I guess we would be going with the former board members who did provide rankings. I guess, so the question is, we have a set of board members who ranked folks last time. Now we have different people on the board. So we can do it either way. We can open it up and we can invite those folks to apply again, or we can not open it up.
I think we should, in my opinion, we, can contact them to see if they're interested in reapplying, but I would also suggest that we open it up and maybe expand are advertising into, it's hard to find someone who's like really perfectly qualified for the architect role, but maybe there are, if we more broadly look for some people that are builders that have a lot of the overlapping skill set. I know that I personally miss having John Laughlin on the board because
Same here.
I'm an engineer, but there's a lot of stuff that is specific to the trade that I just don't know well enough and feel uncomfortable with that. I feel like that would really round out the board if we had someone who knew some of those things a little better.
I agree with that.
So
There's
what you're saying, Grant, is that my experience with the Chamber of Commerce is not good enough
Well,
What?
having the
as
diversity.
the architect position? No.
Yeah,
As a banker, I can't do that.
there is a lady that's on the Clackamas County Historic Review Board that's an architect. And I've dealt with her. She was away for a while because she had a baby, but she's more than competent. And that's an example of an architect that's here doing something like that right now. I don't think she lives in Oregon City.
The architect position does not have to reside in Oregon City. So there's flexibility there. John McLaughlin did not. Yeah, so if you all know people, spread the word. We'll open it up and we will invite the folks who applied last time.
Okay, great.
I assume, Sabrina, that you're okay with being either the McLaughlin person or in that architect role, if depending on who we find, that's good.
Yeah, I told Kelly that I'd be happy to serve in either position. And I do agree that someone with specific architectural knowledge would be a valuable asset to the board.
So what's John McLaughlin doing right now?
Well, he's timed. I think he's, expired his eligibility.
Yeah, he's maxed out.
And so next question is, how long does they have to cycle off for? Is it 1 year or 2 years or? And if it's 2, can we change it to 1 year and then give him a call here in the next few months? No, I'm kidding. I think we can find somebody, but yeah, John, I miss John too.
There's
I
no
miss your
gap.
architectural skills.
It just says no member shall serve more than 6 consecutive years. So
That sounds like 1 year to me. But I think we can find a candidate in the architect role. So yeah, I'll drop some names as soon as I can, and hopefully we'll get somebody in.
great.
And I don't know if, looking for people that aren't necessarily, architects in their title, but are builders or renovators that have worked on historic properties that, I think that they could likely fill that gap too but maybe they wouldn't always, if they see the advertisement just listing architect, they wouldn't necessarily think that should apply to them.
Well, I think we are required to specifically ask for an architect experience in historic preservation. However, if 6 months goes by with an opening that we can't fill with someone who qualifies, then we can appoint someone else we can fill it with anyone else really. So that's kind of what happened this last time, right? It was open for a long time. We didn't have any architects apply, and therefore, I think Sabrina was appointed to that position. So we would most likely, I could check, but we might have to kind of start that 6-month clock again.
Sure. Which, Sabrina, by the way, I really appreciate, even though it's not a formal requirement, having someone in the group that has some formal education in preservation is really nice.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
I hope I'm a valuable asset. I
Oh,
really do.
yes, yes.
All right, anything else tonight, or? In that case, we'll adjourn at 10:21 PM.
Thank you.
All right.
you.
Thank you.